Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. For over a decade ago, things drastically changed for me in regards of emotions. As it turned out, I was very disconnected with them in many ways, and strangely enough, I was completely unaware of this myself. Not realizing that I was hiding my emotions on a daily basis, feeling ashamed, and also learning that emotions were irrational and unreliable. So I never talked to anyone about my feelings, not even my parents. I now understand that this was wrong and emotions can and should be trusted. During this process, I began to ask myself first principle questions, existential questions, which led me to start writing down my own ideas and insights on how emotions work. And since this is the first video in this series about emotions, we need to understand not only our own emotional background, but also how emotions have been used or rather abused in history. So, for a long time now, people have been domesticating wild plants and animals for human use. Over time, this also led to people started domesticating each other, giving rise to all kinds of leaders and rulers. And although we never used the word domestication, the emotional change are the same also for humans. Domestication means to take authority over another being, in dominion over someone, or dictating their behavior, which emotionally translates to being above or superior. Life is ultimately an emotional experience. It's a journey for the soul, and domestication is the tool used to regulate how much we express our emotions out in this world. Domestication can be many things, like manners, traditions, schooling, religion, and more, teaching us how to act, what to feel, how to think, what to say, or what to believe. Or maybe more like how not to act, or what not to feel, or how not to think. And it becomes the way we see and interact with our world. What type of domestication we get will determine who we become, and we call this personality. Domestication can be really sweet and kind, like a grandparent giving us candy to divert our crying. A seemingly kind gesture, but nevertheless taking authority over our emotional expression. We do this mainly because we have a history of thinking that emotions of laughter is better than emotions of crying, that positive is somehow better than negative, causing us not to express what we call negative emotions. But perhaps domestication is best known for being brutal, taken by force, by claiming the desirable alpha position, the top position, like kings claimed authority over its people, priests over citizens, masters over slaves, colonists over natives. And nowadays, most authority positions are acquired through education and knowledge, creating managers over employees and experts over others. The word authority itself means power, force, ruler, honor, or esteem, but emotionally this leaves the subordinate person feeling limited, less, gloomy, sad, or depressed, deprived from their emotional freedom, their sense of own authority. So we all recognize this structure, the power structure, which became the foundation for most societies and religions. We have the superior above and the ordinary below. That means that authority goes here and subordinate here. And in our society, the citizen is always below the rules set by the government. This is the power structure, where a few are above the many. And this structure leaves the authority feeling powerful and important, and the subordinate feeling powerless and insignificant. This being the emotion that we are feeling. For example, when applying for a job, we often overlook the emotional effects of authority. When we become an employee, we abandon our authority to the manager, who now can dictate how we should dress, act, and behave. Our emotional expression is then compromised, and we're no longer in control of our emotions, at least not during working hours. By doing this, we trade our emotional expression for money, feeling limited, which is toxic for the soul. Every power structure has its creator, who normally has the highest authority, and in history that person or group was often known as the Father, like the Church Fathers setting the rules for Christianity, the Founding Fathers setting rules for the US government, and also the authority of Father Christmas, about Santa who knows if you've been bad or good. And by also using the word father as the male parent, men not only got authority in society and religion, but also gained authority in families over women and children. Authority has the upper hand on us, and we usually fear them because they have the power to change our conditions, whether it's the dominant parent changing our house rules or our boss changing our working conditions. Within their power, they can enforce rules and dictate our lives as they see fit. And in their presence, we have a hard time speaking our truth, and we often find it easier and safer to accept and comply with their demands. And in doing that, we let them have our voice. So most of our emotional expression has to do with our voice in one way or another. When we're born, we express our mood and needs with our voice, and then later when parents and others begin to add conditions for when it's appropriate to release our emotions, when we are allowed to laugh or cry. Conditions like these are known to us as manners. And this is when our honeymoon of free expression ends, when hishings and hiding of emotions starts, teaching children to be ashamed of their emotional expression. And then later, when school starts, we're told by our new authority to sit still and listen, two of the most unnatural behaviors for a child, which prohibits their natural expression. So when emotions of sadness comes our way, we don't feel safe crying in front of class. And this hardens us, and usually our only options is to suppress these emotions. And since we now spend on average 16 plus years in school, this type of domestication becomes deeply rooted in us. And we might become reliable workers, but at a huge emotional cost, with all these years of unresolved emotions. And even though there are wonderful teachers out there, they still serve under the principal, which in turn serve under the schooling system that is designed in this way. Schooling also uses the same grading system as all power systems, with the outcome of good or bad. Good when obeying authority, when conditions are met, and bad when rejecting authority, when failing to meet the conditions. Leaving high achievers in school getting praised, feeling powerful, and low achievers getting notified, feeling powerless. Also, couples face this structure of authority due to domestication, and keeping this healthy requires continuous communication, respect, and sharing of emotions. If only one dictates all the rules in a relationship without respect, then that relationship is emotionally dead. Separation is then needed to restore the authority for the agreeable partner. But many still stay due to security and social norms. Domestication also changes the way we love each other, from unconditional love, like when we fall in love, and later when the relationship becomes more serious, we often move into more conditional love that doesn't feel like love at all, when terms, restrictions, or rules are created in exchange for affection. Now, domestication separates our emotional experience from full expression unconditionally to limited expression, with conditions from the authority. These two states are what religion sometimes referred to as the upper world and the lower world. We experience the upper world when we feel joy, love, or excitement. I call this high spirit. And we experience the lower world when feeling anxiety, depression, or feeling lost, calling this low spirit. These are emotional worlds and experienced by all of us, regardless of social status and religion. Finding our way between these worlds can sometimes be hard. Emotions are a guide in navigating these waters, what our intuition or gut tells us. But during domestication, we learn not to trust that compass, and that we should listen to experts and authorities for their guidance and know-how. Like the Christian tradition, for example, where experts claiming that children are born in low spirit and in need of repentance so they can eventually enter high spirit in afterlife, forced to live their whole life under enormous pressure of the highest authority known to man, the Almighty God. And even though Jesus spoke about high spirit, the religion that preceded him unfortunately soon became a system and a tool for domestication, teaching us that God is above all in heaven, that he is a man, a father, a king, and a judge. And failing his authority, we humans risk being sentenced below to hell, a place of agony, torment, and judgment. All this because the church fathers already were domesticated and educated upon writing the doctrines for Christianity, thus creating teachings for the right way to interpret the biblical text, leaving people blind to the emotional and symbolic meanings. Like, for example, the Virgin Mary or the Virgin Mother, where virgin symbolizes raising Jesus without domestication. Virgin meaning clean, pure, or whole, thus letting him remain in his light. We all start our lives in high spirit with free emotional expression, but accumulated over time as we get domesticated by our parents, our peers, teachers, experts, or by media, for example, we move towards low spirit. Even if many parents really tries to remove the worst part of their own upbringing, it's often hard to be aware of one's own baggage of repressed emotions that always somehow seems to burst out in a form of authority when being challenged or under stress. In this way, domestication travels through generations because we adults have lost the language of emotion. We have forgotten that a child is like an emotional sponge, absorbing emotions from their surrounding environment, with the attempt to bring these emotions to light. We parents might think we are street smart by using language and lies, doing one thing, telling the other, but emotionally, the child already knows the truth, because they are still in high spirit. As we grow older, and our domestication starts taking over, we soon forget that we once lived in high spirit. It's like we were born again in the lower world, not remembering that much about the upper world anymore. We now spend our lives in low spirit, searching for high spirit emotions that still echoes in our hearts. Desperate to escape our low spirit emotions, we turn to distractions and stimulants like shopping, games, food, drugs, career, religion, or sports. And although distractions can provide some temporary relief, we still experience passiveness, restlessness, depression, or feeling lost in between, knowing that there's got to be more to life. And it's easy to think that being rich would somehow provide the freedom we all long for, and that the upper class don't have these kinds of struggles. But they do. They also go through domestication, and often even more strict to the many rules from their high authority upbringing. It's just that with economical freedom, the distractions and stimulants can be more expensive and frequent. If we take a look at animals, domestication experts say that it takes on average 4 to 8 weeks to break in a horse, and milk experts claim that it's optimal to not have the newborn calf together with its mother cow longer than 6 hours. The longer they're together, the more they bond to each other, and the more problems during separations. It's optimal for the milk industry, of course, but what about emotionally? And when we talk about dogs, we don't say we break them in. Instead, we use the word train, which to us sounds more civilized. And even though we talk about breaking a habit with people, we never talk about break in a child. We say we are raising the child. And in our society, we often disguise things that sound bad with other words. It just sounds better to say eating pork than eating pig, or compulsory schooling rather than forced or mandatory schooling. We then bypass our natural emotional response and become less prone to start asking questions. And as the word break-in suggests, coming to steal something from you, break-in, tame, discipline, train, domesticate, raise, or any word we like to use, takes the emotional authority away. And don't get me wrong, parenting the emotional way doesn't mean that the child will always get what it wants. It just means that we listen to the child and can better understand their situation and how that is different from ours. It's called respect, and we like it when someone gives us the same. But again, time and emotional baggage is often the top limiting factors that stresses parents into a ruling position at emotional expense of the child. Going through domestication is difficult for a child, and they struggle hard not to give up their emotional expression, their light. They do this by having periods of rebellion, being obstinate, or having temper tantrums. And it's normal, they say, but it's not natural. They say it's normal because it's unfortunately very common in our society due to domestication. And the word rebel, as in rebellion, means re-war, like returning war back. That implies that a war was started before the rebellion. That war is the emotional war between the upper world and the lower world. Rebellion is the child's urge to reclaim their emotional authority. They are thirsty and hungry for the release of their emotions, their emotional freedom, but as we learn by experts that temper tantrums is normal, then we pat children on their head and say, it will pass, it's normal, and never take their cry for help seriously. And where do we draw the line on what is normal? When do we say that cancer is normal? When is anxiety seen as normal? And who is to decide this recent term new normal for us? Normal is simply a state of domestication, hence new normal meaning new level of domestication. But instead of using normal, as the benchmark, which is dictated by authority, we should go back to ask ourselves what is natural. And spending too much time in low spirit, away from natural, will eventually cause us health issues. And I often hear people say that their disorder seems to run in the family, or it's genetic. That's because their domestication patterns are almost the same. The same relatives, same country, same diet habits, perhaps same schooling system, same news reporting, insecurity, for example. But this puts us in low spirit, whereas high spirit always puts our body in rejuvenation and in a healing state. So let's complete this picture. And in high spirit, we experience love and joy. We know the truth. We follow our intuition. We feel whole. It's the home of the soul, and we call this freedom. This emotional state is when we can say or do anything without feeling ashamed, just like a child. Also called emotional freedom. The word esteem, as I mentioned, means power to worship. So when born, we have full self-esteem, when we own and express our emotions 100%. But during domestication, our authorities claim our esteem. We then end up with self-doubt, not owning our emotions, which causes us to suppress them. And when in a state of self-doubt, we begin to search for a way out, and we learn to start building our self-confidence. And in doing this, we move even further away from our emotions by creating a false reality where we appear to be in control. Self-confidence is when we seem to be sure of ourselves on the outside to compensate for feeling inadequate on the inside. So self-confidence works only when conditions are met, when in control. And when not in control, we return to self-doubt. Whereas self-esteem is independent in any situation, unconditional. We often admire a self-confident person because we're taught to look up to them as being the authority above us, being the caretaker who provides opportunities and securities for subordinates. But when challenged, the self-confident person can often become defensive when feeling insulted or neglected as the authority. Taken to the extreme, this insecurity often leads to a sense of entitlement and a tendency to bully and oppress others. In this way, self-confidence becomes a mind game in constant conflict with one's own emotions, other people, between groups, parties, religions, or countries, also known as a power struggle. Ultimately, we all seek freedom. Freedom is defined as the liberation from the power of another. So when born, we don't need liberation because we're already in freedom. But freedom in the lower world is another kind, because we have set a price on almost everything, even the land we walk on. We even learn that the streets in heaven are made of gold. So the concept of wealth, power, and authority has long been connected to God, which has become our ideal. An ideal that often is pictured in white for cleanliness and order. And by the looks of it, both emotions and nature are clearly a threat to this ideal, as emotions have always been difficult to control by the authorities. And the way to maximize control is to teach children early on about the conditions of the lower world, about good and bad, heaven or hell, manners which makes them start to question their own emotions and what is natural, removing their emotional freedom using domestication. I was always afraid of authority growing up, never out of line, always analyzing how to best please authority. It made me start to lower myself, lower my soul, my voice, my choice of words. One might call this being a coward, but when you're a child, you are your emotions 100%, and you cannot understand the constructs of power and authority because that doesn't exist in the high spirit. Being a coward is also sometimes called being gutless or being a baby. Gutless being when we stop using our gut feeling, and being a baby is just mocking the fact that children don't have the power to stand up to authority. And quite frankly, children shouldn't need to. So I regulated myself by starting to rule my own emotions. I became my own authority, my own judge, using power to keep my emotions in place. And for the most part of my life, I had them in fierce control. Often pretending to be happy when I actually was afraid, creating a false reality, creating heaven on the outside and going through hell on the inside. And I fully believe that this was for the best, to not upset my authority figures. And this belief is called domestication. And with it comes the feeling of less and shame. Feelings that does not exist in high spirit, where no above or below exists, no heaven or hell, no good or bad. It's like asking a parent, which of your two children do you love the most? The parent would naturally answer, I love them both equally, without conditions, not having to choose one above the other. Domestication in this way makes you turn against yourself, makes you doubt yourself, mind versus soul, false belief versus truth, what you have been taught versus what you feel. And domestication can be described in many ways, like transition, going from one place to another, separation, being torn apart, death, beginning of something new, discipline, learning how to act, race, learning how to behave, or education, learning the ways of society. In biblical terms, this translates to the story about the snake and Eve eating the apple, also known as the carnal sin, or the fall of man. When we leave the upper world of emotions and enter the lower world of teachings, false gods, false authority who tells us what to do and marking us on our behavior, leaving us feeling ashamed and stigmatized for being natural. So the upper world represents the tree of life that stands in the Garden of Eden next to the tree of the knowledge of good and bad. That represents the lower world. Domestication is the passing between these trees, moving from light to darkness, when getting taught systems with the outcome of good and bad. Schools have good or bad grades. Sports have winners or losers. Cartoons have cops and robbers, heroes and villains. Teaching children that authority is good and subordinates are bad. And although Buddhism don't have heaven or hell, they do have the outcome of good or bad karma. And by also looking at Buddha's childhood, it's clear that he was heavily domesticated by his father, who isolated him from the world in their palace without his mother, who died at childbirth, raising his son to become a great king and a world ruler. This upbringing became Buddha's suffering, and when he escaped it, his teachings about his escape later became the religion. So similar to Christianity, who teaches the way out of sin, Buddhism teaches the way out of suffering. But what happens when we teach children the way out of sin and suffering when they're already free? They have never sinned or felt suffering. They have done nothing wrong, and therefore in no need to learn the way out of something they were never in. And by teaching children rules, obligations, behaviors and virtues, and also the right way of living, we ourselves becomes the creators of sin and suffering by using domestication, telling them that being natural is wrong, that they are wrong. Religion and other alike systems in doing this becomes both the problem and the false solutions, where the problem is putting children in a condition where they question their emotions, and the solution that they should follow the rules by the new authority, whether it's the parent, teacher, guru or priests, all false teachings in matters of the heart. And this is incredibly hard on any authority to take in, and especially hard on the parent, that we are the ones who put our children through this, leading them astray from high spirit by following our example, because we ourselves are blind to the fact that we became domesticated before we even had a choice. And it's nobody's fault really, for our parents and their parents and so on. Everyone went through domestication, unknowingly. And I couldn't stop crying when I realized this, just how early domestication blinds us, and to the extent domestication have been used for thousands of years. First I got angry at the authority for being greedy, but then I realized that most authorities think they're doing the right thing because of their education and beliefs, and so does the average parent and teachers and experts. And I also thought that about my life, that I was doing good in having a good education, a good career, unaware that I was suppressing my emotions on a daily basis. So instead of teaching children, don't do this, stop doing that, believe this, do as you're told, or else, using threats and fear, we should do the opposite and learn from children about love and high spirits. Learning that the upper world is eternal, home of the souls, where we can return to either in this life or the afterlife unconditionally. Murderers, thieves, everybody. And the lower world is the domesticated life, feeling stuck with beliefs based on conditions. Both of these worlds can be experienced on Earth, and we can choose when we realize that it's a choice we can actually make. Domestication exists all over the world. Traditions are created from it, governments control it, corporations need it, religion and society teaches it. But what about us? So many are struggling emotionally and searching for a meaning. We might think that it's normal, but it's not natural. And this is why we feel lost and separated from our emotions. Luckily, there are plenty of ways to de-domesticate, returning back. Nothing is absolute and everything is changeable and reversible. We don't have to die to enjoy the kind of freedom we once felt as a child. More and more people nowadays are taking responsibility for their emotions. We just have to remember that we are our society, So as we change, so will the way we interact with our children and our society change. Learning how to find more time to letting children express their emotions, and that we try not to interfere or cut off their emotions even though we don't understand. Remembering that children are still in upper world, in high spirit, which is mysterious and alien for domesticated adults. So that was plenty. I think we can stop here. Thank you for listening, and if you have questions, leave a comment below and I'll answer them. And if you like to continue this series on emotions, stay tuned. Next up is de-domestication. See ya!